Hello! I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback, suggestions, and subscriptions are always welcome. But let's get to the story itself. I know it will touch you. I always thought that love should be forever. That it's something that helps you overcome all the difficulties of life, even when everything else seems difficult. But, as it turned out, not always. My name is Anna, and I went through something that few people can imagine. A divorce that turned my whole life upside down. And I was not prepared for what came after it. The day he left, I couldn't believe what was happening. How could it be? What happened to all the love we had built over the years? How did I end up in a situation where I had to become a single mom, with my little daughter in my arms and an empty wallet? He was my first husband. We met at university, we were dreamers, we made plans for the future. We promised each other that we would overcome all difficulties together. But when things became difficult, when our finances started to falter, when I quit my job to spend more time with our daughter, he changed. He became cold and alienated. I saw how he started spending more time at work, and then he started coming home late under various pretexts. At one point, when I felt that something was wrong, I asked him directly, "Do you love me?" He said. "We are just different. I can't be with you anymore." It was like a blow to the chest. How can it be 13 years together, and just like that? Without warning, without trying to save our relationship, at that moment I realized that I would have to start all over again. If it weren't for our little daughter, I wouldn't have made it. She was my support, my light in the darkness. It was only for her that I found the strength to get out of bed every morning. And here it is, a new beginning. Not with the man I loved, but with the child I now had to provide for. The same day he left, I went with the child to my mother's house. We left our apartment, our home, where we used to be together. Life became difficult. It was the time when I started experiencing all these financial difficulties. It was not easy for me to find a job after being at home with my child for several years. The time was different, everything was changing very quickly. And here I was struggling not only with life, but also with my own doubts. Will I be able to pull it all off on my own? The first few months were a real challenge. And I had to pay rent, pay for a kindergarten, buy groceries, and do it all on my own. Back then, I worked in a cafe and sometimes did some part-time delivery work. All these working hours I pulled through only thanks to my little girl. She became my inspiration and strength. No matter how hard it was, I tried to show her that we can live well, that we don't have to give up. Of course, I was scared. I was scared for the future, for whether I would really be able to give my child everything she needed. I was afraid that everything would happen again, that I would be left behind again, that I would have to start from scratch. But against the background of this fear, there was also hope that I could do it, hope that everything would change for the better. I was not ready to give up. I have always thought that not only a struggle, but also an opportunity if you do not lose faith. Soon, through hard work, I started to find stability. It wasn't easy, but I was able to pull myself, my family, my daughter together, and gradually we got out of that hell. Every day it became easier. I started learning new things, looking for new opportunities. But just when I thought everything was fine, my heart was again nervous. I found out that my ex-husband had contacted me. And this was the first wake-up call that my life would change again. For me, it was a step backwards. But I didn't know how much the next part of this story was preparing for me. I certainly didn't know that he would come to me for help. Why did he decide to look for me 30 years later when I had already started a new life? Somehow, I guess, everything comes back. And even if life turned its back on me, I still retained my humanity. But why did he come to me now? And am I ready to meet this challenge? So, what will you do when someone who left you in the most difficult times suddenly comes back into your life? Will you forgive them? Or will you help them or close the door forever? And the thoughts remain with us, and we do not know what will happen next. What is waiting for me? Thank you for staying with us. This episode will be about the struggle with loneliness, about how I started to believe in myself again and searched for new hope after being left alone with my child. And if you've ever felt lonely, this story is for you. So stay until the end. After he left, I was left alone. And not just alone, I was a single mother with a little girl who needed everything from love to stability, financial help and attention. All these months of loneliness hurt in a special way. Every day seemed endless, and all my energy was spent just trying to cope with the immediate problems. And I would wake up in the morning, look at my little one who was still sleeping, and think, you are all I have. You are my support, my hope. But what happens when you are alone, when all your dreams have come true, and reality is not exactly what I imagined? Little Olia did not understand everything that was happening. She was touching, always asking, "Where is Daddy?" And what was I supposed to answer? How could I explain to a little heart that her dad was not coming back? Every such moment was painful and inevitable. Of course, I couldn't stay still. Every time I felt on the edge, I tried to find a way out. I remember one evening, when Alia had already fallen asleep, I was sitting in the kitchen and thinking, what's next? I can change my life, but how do I do it? How do I start again when everything seems lost? I was scared. There were times when I couldn't pay the bills, when I had to count every cent to buy Alia clothes or food. But I decided that I had no right to give up. How can you give up when you have a child to fight for? I worked harder, looked for opportunities, tried to open a small online business, all kinds of ways to get back on my feet. And then one night became a turning point. I was lying on my bed, unable to sleep, thinking about all the difficulties. And at that moment I had a realization. I am strong. I have to do this for myself and for Olia. And I can do it. It was a new beginning for me because I finally believed in myself. Life did not give me the opportunity to rest, but every day I learned to be better, stronger. And even at this time, on the verge of usual hopelessness, I found small moments of happiness. Alia began to show me her first drawing, simple, but so important to me. Each drawing was like a small sign that I was on the right track, that there was a point in fighting. Later, I found a part-time job working in a coffee shop, where of course no one expected great stories. But there, for the first time, I felt like a human being again, not just a mom, not just a widow, but a person doing something for herself. I started meeting new people, having conversations, getting to know people from different walks of life. I felt that there was room in my heart for new beginnings, new emotions. Gradually, even outside of the heavy loneliness, I began to notice how my inner strength and self-confidence were growing. Perhaps it was just small steps, but each of them was important to me. I never thought that I would be called a heroine, so strong and determined, but I felt like I was being reborn with every breath. Alia is my main support. Every laugh, every hug and word from her became a huge incentive for me to keep going. Loneliness still sometimes took its toll when I came home to an empty house and there was only silence inside. But I learned to appreciate those moments of peace and began to look for a balance between loneliness and the little joys that remained in my life. And you know how it often happens when there is loneliness, there is a place for new thought, dreams, and opportunities. I realized that only I can control my future. And then, when I thought everything was settled, when I had gained some stability, he came back. My ex-husband appeared on my doorstep like a ghost of the past. What did he want? How should I react to this? I had already managed to build a new life and new rules for myself. Was he able to break down the wall I had built between us? And what should I do now with this new challenge? He came back, but was it really his true desire or just another maneuver? You will find out in the next episode. But am I ready to open the door again for someone who left me in the most difficult times? Is it possible to regain lost trust? And is it worth forgiving? Stay until the end. This story will not leave you indifferent. A year after the betrayal seemed like an eternity to me. There was plenty of time to think about everything. But the more I thought, the more I was tormented by the question, how could I not see it? How could I have been so blind to what was happening around me? All these moments that seemed quite ordinary suddenly became completely different. If someone had told me back then that I would be able to move on with my life after such a painful loss, I probably would have laughed. For the first few months, I couldn't believe that this had happened to me. I seriously thought that my life was a fairy tale and that I would never be touched by such pain. But the reality, as always, was much harsher. I looked at my child and did not understand how to explain to her what was happening. It was very hard for her when her dad left. Then, at that time, I had to answer a question that has never been clearly answered. Why did this happen? Betrayal was a terrible wound. It was not just a trauma for the relationship, it was devastation for the heart and soul. At that time, I didn't know how to find the strength to rise from this pain. The first thing I faced was a lack of faith in people. How can you forgive if you've been betrayed so badly? But I couldn't afford to stay in a state of victimization. I realized that I had to move forward even if it hurt. And this is where my recovery journey began. I turned to a psychologist, a person who helped me understand my emotions. Step by step, I learned to trust again, not forgetting that the pain I had experienced was only part of my journey. Time passed, and gradually I began to feel a little lighter. I returned to work and started thinking about the future, and I even felt that I might find my strength again. I started walking with my daughter again, and these little moments became more and more important to me. They gave me hope that I could still start living a normal life without carrying this burden. But betrayals are not forgotten. No matter how hard I tried to find inner peace, the memory of what happened would not leave my heart. How do you get over it and move on? Every year brought new discoveries for me. At first, they were just moments of ordinary survival. I was struggling to provide for myself and my child, experiencing financial difficulties, often having to dye myself small things so that my daughter could get the best. But over time, I began to notice how I was changing myself. The year after the betrayal began to bring bitter wisdom that I did not want to have, but which was necessary. I realized that everything that happens has a reason, and that even if I could never forgive him, I had to find a way to forgive myself. Every day I became stronger, although it was a struggle. It took me a while to learn to trust people again. Even my close friends, with whom I used to go out together, helped me. It seemed that I could not open up completely. But gradually, step by step, I became clear to myself. I realized that the only thing I can control is my emotions. And even if the pain doesn't go away, I have the right to change my attitude towards it. After all these experiences, my life became different. I realized that there was no point in living in the past, and even if my heart was wounded, I had to find a way to live in this world, even without trusting the one who betrayed me. And then one day, as I sat in a cafe and looked at Olia drawing on her piece of paper, I realized that I no longer needed the man who betrayed me. And while I was not limited by his presence, I did not need anything from him except what I could do on my own. My heart became stronger. I realized that life without him would not only be possible, but also beautiful. My hope was restored. I realized that I could get up and go on by myself. And this was my greatest achievement. How did I cope with the fact that the one who left me returned? And was I strong enough to forgive or let go? All these questions remain open and are waiting to be answered in the next episode. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow the next parts of this story. After everything I had been through, I was finally faced with a new choice. But what if the one who dumped me came back looking for forgiveness? Could this be a new chance? Is it possible to start again, or is it just a game of my kindness? Stay tuned, the answers to these questions will definitely surprise you. The year after the betrayal, as I mentioned, was a period of profound change for me. It was a time of inner purification and development. I accepted the fact that I could no longer keep my heart closed to everything, but I still wanted to start a new life, to leave the past behind. But even before I realized that maybe I should let go of this pain, I experienced another heavy loss. I lost my job. It may seem like a trifle to some, but for me, a woman raising a child on my own, it was a real challenge. I realized that if I did not find a new path for myself, my child would not have a better future either. Then naturally, I plunged into job search. At first, it seemed that everything was going worse and worse. My efforts were not working, and I felt helpless. But then a miracle happening. I received an offer from a company where I could apply my skills and more. I had to make an important choice. The offer was very interesting, but it meant that I had to leave my old life behind, change my place of residence, and start from scratch. For a long time I doubted whether it was worth going further or whether it was better to stay in the comfortable but wounded world I had created for myself. But then I looked again at my little daughter, who became my support and hope. It was the moment when I realized that life goes on. And if I wanted a future for myself and for her, I had to act. I had no right to be weak. And that's when I decided that I needed to let go of the past and step into the new, even if it wasn't going to be an easy path. Maybe this new chance will be not only for me, but also for my child. It was the only way I could get up from the pain I was in. And just when I was starting to get used to my new life, I had a meeting with the one who left me. Was it a sign of fate? I could not understand what it really was. The man who left me many years ago reappeared in my life. And most importantly, he came to ask for forgiveness. I felt like I was back in the past. But on the other hand, I became aware again of how much I had changed. My pride, my independence, I became a different person. I was no longer the weak woman who had once been left without hope. I became strong, ready to make decisions that affect my life and the life of my daughter. And he stood in front of me, unable to say what he wanted to say. Was this real repentance? Or was it just an attempt to get me back into his life again? I couldn't tell right away. And I didn't even know if I wanted to respond to this request. If he had come back when I needed him most, everything would have been different. But now I was not the same. My answer to his request was simple, but it reflected everything I had felt over the years. I said that I forgive, not for him, but for myself. To not carry this burden with me anymore. Only I was able to forget, but not to become a part of this pain again. Now I had everything I needed, me and my child, My new life, my new opportunities. I was strong enough to move on. I could say that I was starting a new stage, where there was no room for old mistakes. How can we move forward, leaving everything behind? And will this new life have the same impact on my heart as the old memories once did? Stay tuned in the next episode. I'll tell you if I'll be able to keep my new feelings and strength on the new path. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Today is going to be a difficult episode. Do you remember the man who left me 30 years ago? He's back again. And now the question arises, am I ready to help him? But is it worth going back to the past that is already behind me? Who are you ready to find out how things develop further? Then stay with me and I will tell you what happened. In the morning, when I went for a walk with my daughter, I suddenly heard this familiar voice. My heart skipped a few beats. It was him, the one I hadn't wanted to see for a long time, but who had nevertheless reappeared in my life. He was standing on the other side of the street, over 60 years old, but I still recognized him immediately. And now what? Emma, he didn't even look the way I remembered him clearly. The years had taken their toll. I need to talk to you, he said, not even realizing how hard it was for me to breathe looking at him. I had tried to leave all these emotions behind, and now that he was standing in front of me, I felt myself on the verge of old pain again. I was surprised by his request for help, because all these years he had lived without me, without us. And now, after all these years, he appeared with such a face and words. I knew that we had both changed. Emma, the only question was, am I ready to help the person who once left me? Does he have the right to my support after all these years? I couldn't answer right away. He asked me to help. It was not ordinary help. He had lost everything, his apartment, his business, his relationship with his family. And now, after all these years, he was on the verge of bankruptcy. I realized that he was not only physically, but also emotionally broken. His face reflected all the years he had been alone, without support. He tried to explain his situation, talked about his mistakes, about how he could not cope with life's difficulties. But what was most important to me was that he finally recognized how much he had made a mistake when he left me. And now he was looking for support. Not just material support, he also needed moral support. He needed hope, which he probably had in years. I began to doubt, am I ready to forgive? Am I ready to reconnect with a person who, in fact, once broke everything? The question was not only whether I had the right to help, but also whether I wanted to help. In those moments when I sat with him and listened to him talk about his struggle for survival, I realized one thing. I was in the same situation once, when I was left with nothing. I knew exactly what it was like to be abandoned at the very bottom and have to get up on your own. But now I was completely different. I was not the woman he left behind. I had my integrity, my strength, and I couldn't just take it all back. But I also realized that this was probably my chance to see if I could forgive after all. So I decided to help, but not in the way he expected. I did not return to his life. I didn't become a part of it like I used to be. I gave him something that maybe he really deserved, a chance to recover. But that was enough. I helped him find support. I pointed out where he could go for help, but I was no longer the person he had once been to me. I realized one simple thing: helping does not mean forgetting. The helping means giving a person a chance to change their life without expecting the old relationship to return. This gave me peace of mind. I didn't stay in his net. I did not allow myself to fall into old emotions. But here's the question: did I do the right thing by helping him? Did I have the right? Was it the right choice? And was helping him really my victory? Perhaps I did not get answers to these questions, but maybe this is the point. Sometimes we have to help without expecting anything in return. Sometimes there are moments in life when you just have to act without looking for clear answers. This is the moment when I made a choice that changed everything. But you know what? I'm still not sure if it was the right choice. And what do you think is the true meaning of choice? And do we always choose what we need rather than what we want? I will tell you how my choice affected my future, and you will decide for yourselves whether I did the right thing. However, calm down or it will be emotionally intense, and very soon you will find out what happened next. What happened after I helped him turned all my ideas upside down. I thought that I would never go back to the past again, and that this episode would be just a chapter in my story that I could safely close. But I did not expect him to come back. The day he came back into my life, he brought not only his own problems, but also questions that had long been echoing in my head. A few weeks after I helped him, I received a letter. Not an email, a paper letter. A letter that changed everything. His words were simple, but full of meaning. He remained grateful, but now he had a question. He asked me to think about whether I was ready to be with him again. Could it be that after all these years we could start all over again? So I was faced with a choice to leave everything as it was, to forget about him once and for all, or to give a chance to someone who had already betrayed my trust once. I realized that it was not just a question of returning to the past. It was a question of my future, my happiness, and most importantly, my inner peace. And then the question arose, am I ready to choose him again? The burden of the choice was on my shoulders, and every day I became more and more convinced that it was not just a choice between two people. It was a choice between my old life and a new one, between who I used to be and who I had become. And it was a very difficult choice, because of everything I had now was the result of my own efforts, my struggle for the future. How could I risk what I had gained for someone who had already left me once? But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that he was very changed. I felt sincerity in his words, and although it was hard to believe that they were not just empty promises, I still could not reject him again. After all, time does not stop, and although I could continue to live without him, would I really be happy? I realized that I had doubts, and they didn't go away. Did I really want to believe him? Or would I just be living in the shadow of someone who had once abandoned me again? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my life became much stronger after I started living on my own. I gained a sense of freedom, independence, and most importantly, I learned to love myself. In the end, I made a decision. I decided to give him a chance. But it was not the chance he might have expected. I did not return to him as a partner. I wasn't letting him come back into my life in the way he once was. I gave him a chance to be a part of my life, but in a different capacity. And I started to think of it as a new opportunity, not only for him, but for me as well. Maybe it was a chance for both of us to see if we could be more than just two people who were victims of circumstances. From the moment I made my decision, everything changed. He became a part of my life, but only in the sense that I was ready to give him another opportunity for change. We started to communicate, but not in the same way as before. My trust was like a thread, it could break at any moment. But I decided not to hold grudges and give him a chance. Now I realize that life is not just about getting or giving, it's about balance. And if I can find this balance between those feelings that were left and what I have today, then maybe we can start something new. But was this choice the right one? Did I take a step that changed everything in my life? And will I be happy with him? A lot of time has passed, a lot of emotions, and here I am, standing in front of you with a question: can we really start all over again? A true forgiveness is not just words, it is a willingness to change your attitude towards the one who has hurt you. And if after all these years, after everything that has happened, I still decided to give it a chance, can we say that this is a new beginning? Let's figure it out together. My thoughts revolve around what I did. I gave him a chance. But was it a real chance, or did I just allow myself to believe again? Yes, I made a decision not to hold on to my resentment and not to live with it anymore. But, I felt how important it was not just to forget, but to let go, and this letting go was more for me than for him. When I looked at him again, there was no longer the fear and pain that I had been carrying in my heart all these years. I looked him not as the man I had once loved, but as a person who had made his choice and was now perhaps trying to correct his mistakes. And so, it was then that I realized that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It was important to realize that forgiveness was my step towards freedom, not dependence. We are all afraid that when we forgive, it means that we allow things to hurt us again. But in reality, forgiveness is not about putting things back to the way they were. It's about releasing the anger, resentment, and pain that follow us around like a shadow. A forgiveness is an act of self-respect, because when we can't let go, we leave ourselves captive to those old emotions. What I did was not just a repeat of an old relationship. It was a new page in my life, on which I wrote new rules, new opportunities, and new reflections. From the moment I decided to forgive, I got rid of the feeling that I was living in the past. I started living in the present again, and it was a new beginning, not only for the two of us, but also for me. Now the question is, can everything really change? Is it really possible to return to what once was? Is there a chance for a new relationship after all these years of pain and disappointment? For me, the answer was not clear. Based on what we had before, we may not be able to build what we had again. But on the other hand, what do we have to lose? Time does not stand still, and every day is a chance to change your destiny. I decided not to look for the perfect solution, but to accept what I have. Not everything in life is perfect, and not all choices are 100% right. But what we have now is a chance to create something new without repeating the past. Do I have any fears? Of course I do, and that I am a living person, and my emotions are not just cold thoughts. But I don't want to live in fear anymore. I realized that true courage is not about avoiding pain, but about going through it and giving yourself a chance for a new life. Perhaps the new beginning will not be the way I imagined it. Perhaps it will be more difficult, with new challenges and not as perfect as in fairy tales. But I am ready for it, and we must go this way together, no matter what lies ahead. Every new beginning is not perfect. We cannot control everything that happens, but we can choose how to react to what happens. And now, when I look at it, I realize that it will not be a perfect path, but it is a path that I am walking with new views on life, new values, new beliefs. And maybe this is the best thing I could have done. We are together again, but not the same as before. Now we have new opportunities, new perspectives, a new understanding of what we want from life and from each other. Are you ready for changes in your life? And more importantly, are you ready to accept someone who has already broken your beliefs once? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the story doesn't end there.